Hello, my name is Dr. Sean McCorkle at Summer Creek Animal Clinic, and today I wanted to talk to you about fleas and ticks in dogs. And today my assistant Lauren is going to help by asking some questions, and we hope this is helpful for you to learn more about ticks and fleas in your dog.
Dr. McCorkle, how does my dog get fleas and ticks?
Yeah, so fleas and ticks are typically picked up in the environment. Outdoor environment is the most common, of course, but I think the thing that is most often overlooked is that fleas and ticks can hitch a ride on other animals, including pant legs of people walking in and out of the house. And so we commonly see fleas and ticks on pets that rarely leave the house. And that's just because fleas and ticks are mobile. They hitch rides on people, on other animals, on wildlife. And so it's really impossible, especially where we are in Fort Worth, Texas, to have an environment that's completely secure from fleas and ticks.
Can fleas and ticks spread from my dog to my home and family?
Yes, absolutely. So fleas prefer, and ticks as well, but mostly fleas prefer their animal hosts. And so if you have a dog or cat in the environment, they're definitely going to gravitate towards them. But they will feed on people, and that has been a problem, particularly in severe infestations. And ticks particularly are really sneaky. You can have a tick on you for quite a while before you notice it. And so it's really the best way to protect your family is to protect your pets from fleas and ticks, because they're the most common transmission of those things to people.
And can my dog get fleas and ticks if they are primarily an indoor dog?
Yeah, I hit on this a little bit at the beginning, but that is definitely the case. We see this every single day at our practice here in Fort Worth, that indoor or primarily indoor dogs, even honestly, if you had a strictly indoor dog, we're still going to see fleas in those situations. And just as an example, many cats are indoor only cats, and it is very common for indoor cats that are not on prevention to have fleas from time to time. So the short answer to that is absolutely yes. Fleas get inside the house very easily and can set up shop if you're not careful.
What health problems can fleas and ticks cause my dog?
Yeah, that's one of the big questions, right? What's the problem with them besides them just being disgusting? The biggest thing that we think about in dogs and cats and in people is the transmission of diseases. And many people are familiar with tick-borne diseases that are transmitted from tick bites. And there's many of them. The one that people are most familiar with is Lyme disease. But fleas can actually transmit diseases as well, both to people and to animals. And so there's a variety of them, and the infectious diseases are certainly a concern. The other thing, particularly with fleas, is it is one of, if not the most common allergy we see in dogs and cats for that matter. And so if you have a dog whose immune system is abnormally responding to the flea saliva, so when the flea bites the pet, that saliva that gets into the skin can cause the immune system to overreact, and that leads to inflammation and intense itching. And so that is one of the most common things we see, and is fortunately the easiest allergy to prevent.
How effective are flea and tick medications?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, because it really depends on the type of medication or flea prevention that we're discussing. And so we can start with something like a flea and tick shampoo, very commonly known and used, can be effective to some degree for fleas and ticks that are on the pet at that moment. But oftentimes people think that that's going to protect their pets from fleas and ticks, and that is absolutely not the case. There's not that residual effect. And so you're going to maybe kill them that are on the pets. But I think if the biggest thing people take away from this video is that, particularly with fleas, they spend at least 85% of their time in the environment. And so you're not going to get rid of a flea problem if you're just intermittently killing the fleas that are on the pet, because the vast majority of those fleas are in the environment. Then you've got other, types of products we would categorize as over the counter. So those are going to be your less expensive, typically topical products. And there's a big varying degree of effectiveness. And a good general rule of thumb, like with many things, the cheaper the product, the less effective and more likely that you're going to have side effects. And of course, that's a generalization, but that is typically true when we're talking about this. So the more expensive over-the-counter products are typically going to be more effective and generally safer. And then you have the prescription level products that you can get through your veterinarian. And of course, those are going to be the most effective products. And I think there's another question on here where we'll talk a little bit more about that. But those should be discussed with your veterinarian so there can be a specific recommendation made for your pet.
That's the exact question I have now. What is the exact difference between the over-the-counter and the prescription flea and tick medications? And why should I go with one over the other?
Yeah, so the small answer to that is that prescription products are going to be generally safer and more effective. Now, there's nuances there. So when we break it down, and again, generally speaking, the over-the-counter products most of them are going to be topical products that are regulated by the EPA. That is mainly they have to have certain qualifications to get the approval of the EPA. That's mainly looking at, or pretty much exclusively looking at, safety of the product. So if it is safe to use, they can get approval to sell over the counter. Whereas the prescription products are regulated by the FDA, which is a much more rigorous process that is looking for both safety and efficacy. And efficacy just means its ability to do what it claims to do. So it's going to be more tightly regulated in a more stringent process. And so any of these products are going to have potential for side effects or reactions. So those always have to be considered. But that's the big difference between over-the-counter products and prescription. Of course, over-the-counter products are going to be less expensive than prescription products. But the prescription products, particularly the oral flea and tick preventions, are going to be the most effective products at killing fleas and ticks, as well as preventing infestation moving forward. And that's not across the board. We use a topical product at our practice, particularly for cats, because it's a very, very good, safe, effective product. And so I think that answers the question. And there's a lot of nuances, so I'm trying to keep it fairly general, but hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that kind of also answers the question of what different types of flea and tick preventative treatments are there. The next question is, what will my veterinarian recommend for flea and tick treatment?
Yeah, I will say just real quick on the question that we mostly already addressed, there is a third category. We talked about topical, like the liquid products, the oral products. There are flea and tick collars that many people are aware of. Vast majority of flea and tick collars are minimally effective. And I do see a higher tendency towards reactions to those. And again, it's the same thing. The cheaper the flea tick collar, the less effective and more chance for reactions there's going to be. There's one flea and tick collar that I've seen that's had fairly consistent good results. It's actually going through a lot of scrutiny right now, and I'm waiting for more data to come out from that. So I don't want to list the specific name, but I, generally speaking, would be cautious when using the flea and tick collars. To answer your question about what will my veterinarian recommend for flea and tick treatment, it really depends on your individual pet, their history, the breed, the exposure level. We are very blessed in 2021 to have a lot of good options, whereas just 20 years ago, the options for good prevention were very limited. And so with more research and more development, like for example, the product that we use at our practice, in that class of products, there's 4 of them now. So there's 4 options that are going to provide really good prevention. We chose the product we did because we feel that it is, again, generally speaking, a very safe product. Although there's nuances there that you have to consider, which is why it's always a good idea to discuss it with your veterinarian to make sure that that's a good product for your pet. But that it also, in the studies that the FDA did, has the broadest tick protection that we could find, which is really important in our area in Fort Worth. And so we want to pick something that's going to provide the adequate level of protection and as safe as possible for that pet. And so in Fort Worth, that's everything. That's really good heartworm prevention, flea prevention, tick prevention, and a regular intestinal parasite dewormer, because parasites are such a big deal here.
Awesome. And how can I identify fleas on my dogs? And also, how can I identify ticks on my dog?
Yeah, so we'll start with ticks because I think that's a relatively simpler question to answer. Ticks can be challenging to find on your pet. They are generally slower moving than fleas. They tend to attach and feed for a while. And so anytime, particularly if you've gone out to an area that's going to be higher exposure, so that's going to be anywhere where there's brush or more plant, woods, that kind of thing, dog parks, in our area, really anywhere you go out, you want to make sure that you're doing good tick checks on your pet and yourself after that. So it's looking in areas where ticks like to hide. So that's going to be the armpits of the dog, both on the front legs and in the back legs, underneath the paws, in between the toes on both the top and the bottom, inside the ear flaps. So they like to hide inside there. So get a good look inside the ears, on the underside of the belly, and kind of in the inguinal area, and really anywhere else on the body. So you want to do a good look over, but make sure you look in those areas that are more hidden and difficult to see. That's where they like to hang out. Fleas, I think, are a little bit more complex, just because people, generally speaking, expect to see the fleas if they have a flea problem. And I cannot tell you how many times, the vast majority of times, when I find fleas or evidence of fleas on a dog or cat for that matter, it is unknown to the client. That's because, again, it's really important to remember that fleas spend at least 85% of their time in the environment. So unless you have a severe flea infestation, there's a really good chance you're not going to see a lot of fleas on your pet. You could still have a pretty decent infestation in the environment, whether that be in your yard or inside the bedding and under in carpet and things like that, where the pets hang out. If you don't have a severe infestation, you're not going to see a lot of fleas on your pet. So that's really important to remember. The second thing is that fleas like to defecate on the pets. And so knowing what flea dirt, we call it flea dirt, it's basically flea feces, looks like, so that you can look for that on your pet, can sometimes be really helpful. So it looks like little tiny black granules of dirt. And so if you start at the base of the tail and slowly run your thumbs through your pet's hair, you can sometimes see little black speckles of dirt at the base of the hair, right around where the skin is. And that is evidence of fleas. Oftentimes when I find flea dirt, I might get lucky and find an adult flea walking around, but most of the time I just see a lot of flea dirt and no adult fleas. The fleas jump off the dog, the feces stays on them. And so that's the second thing that I would tell owners to be really diligent about looking for. And then the third thing, again, because flea allergies are so common in dogs, that looking for specific types of itching in the dog can be really helpful. So itching that primarily focuses around the base of the tail on the dog's back or on the back half of the dog's body, those are classic signs of flea allergy dermatitis, particularly if the itching and there's hair loss and redness around the base of the tail, on top of the back, or extending onto the tail. Classic flea allergies. And again, oftentimes I do not see fleas actively on those pets, but I can guarantee the client that their dog has been exposed to fleas, even if just a couple, because their immune system is reacting and causing all of this inflammation. So those are the main ways that I would try to counsel clients to think about fleas and ticks in their pets and how to evaluate and look for them. And I can't stress enough that even if there's none of those things, it doesn't mean that there aren't fleas on your pets. You could still have a low-grade infestation and not see any of those things. And so the most important takeaway is to ensure, especially if you live in a climate like Fort Worth, Texas, that your pet is on regular year-round flea and tick prevention every single month of the year.
Thanks, Dr. McCorkle. And last question, what should I do if I see fleas or ticks on my dog?
Yeah. Besides freak out because they're gross, the first thing to do I would recommend is call your veterinarian. Again, there are over-the-counter products you can look at, but they're just not going to be as effective. And there's a more detailed conversation that you can have with your veterinarian that's going to better get the issue under control. For example, if you have multiple pets in the house, you're really going to struggle getting a flea infestation under control until you get all of those pets well protected. So I think the best answer I can give is to contact your veterinarian, have that discussion with them, and get your pet on really good parasite prevention. And so if you have any other questions, we would love to help you out or chat with you. We are at Summer Creek Animal Clinic in Fort Worth, Texas. Our phone number is 817-523-1139. And we have a lot more great information on fleas and ticks at our website at summercreekvet.com. Thank you so much.